When we first started going through the COVID challenges, we weren't quite sure how behaviours would change. And one of the things that became very apparent early on is that customer expectations weren't really modifying or changing, is that the expectations were as they wanted everything done faster and using simpler processes, even in the circumstances that we were dealing with at the time. And that sort of forced us to start thinking holistically about how we might make best use of the productive capacity we had at our disposal to try and deliver a better service experience. And we had some key learnings along the way to do that. And one of the things we introduced was a framework called Golden Ticket, which was designed to reward brokers that were working collaboratively with us to get it right the first time. And also it forced an investment in resources in different parts of the value chain to deliver a service experience that people were looking for. And it actually accelerated the discussion around digital solutions in the environment. I'm not sure, Chris, whether there's anything you want to add there.
Yeah, and I know we talk about this quite regularly, but one of the things that we obviously fast-tracked during that time was DocuSign, which we are looking to put into the broker channel. So I think that's been a really good shift. I think customers are a lot more open to using digital channels than what they had previously. I think the other thing that's been a real positive has been some of our responses in terms of emergency response package. I think our ability to mobilise and respond quickly has been great. I know there's quite a number of customers have been impacted more recently by the floods, and I think we have our assistance available quite quickly, ready to go for customers, which has been great. That's certainly something I think we're doing better as a result of COVID.
Well, I guess the other thing is the competitive landscape morphed quite dramatically. There were some lenders that were active before COVID hit, became inactive, and I think that had a profound impact on the application flow that we're having to deal with. But I think the re-emergence of the non-bank market after COVID has had an impact on the competitive landscape, and we're mindful of that in terms of how we shape our competitive positioning. I guess the other one that's quite obvious is supply chain disruption. We've got quite a substantial stock of approvals that are getting quite old in relative terms, and so that's forcing us to rethink about how we manage aged approvals. And the final thing, which I touched on earlier on, was just around digitisation is the key to building scale and enhancing our overall competitive positioning. And I know, Chris, that's something that we're really heavily investing in.
Yeah, 100%. And I think even just touching on what you mentioned around customers that have had supply chain issues and issues with approvals, one of the other things we've looked at is also sale and buyback and looking to extend the ability to be able to do that. We've looked at some of our approvals and how we can also extend, taking into consideration some of the challenges with supply side issues. Again, I don't think that's something, unfortunately, that's going to end anytime soon. And so we are consistently looking at ways to make it easier for brokers and customers more broadly when they're going through an approval process or a funding process with us.
Very simply, for transactions that are becoming more and more commoditised like cars, I mean, it's clearly digital end-to-end. It's really the only way you can build a scalable service experience in a cost-effective manner. And so I frankly think that certainly for motor vehicle type transactions, a digital end-to-end service experience is inevitable, and we've well and truly started that process. Secondly, I think for the transactions that don't go through a bridge application processes and full applications, they're evolving quite significantly as well, and we're already starting to see the introduction and adoption of alternative assessment pathways and servicing methodologies through the introduction of things like business activity statements pathways as part of the overall assessment process. So I think, Chris, they're probably the two things that stand out for me. Is there anything in particular from your perspective?
No, I'd just echo that. I think 100% for me, in terms of priorities, is digitising asset finance. I think, as you mentioned, simple, straight through cars, vans, trucks, etc. We should be able to digitise and get them through quicker. That's certainly the priority within my team, is working through that from an approval process and then working our way through documentation as well as settlements. That's certainly key for me.